it's Bonnie with So Inspired by Bonnie with another Tuesday's tip. Today we're going to talk about wonky blocks and how to create them, how to make them look balanced, even though they're kind of whoppy-jawed, as I like to call them, and how to do it even if you don't have a pattern. You can just sort of create it. So I'm going to go over and refresh my computer page and make sure that everybody can hear me. So I'm going to sit down a minute. And it looks like we're there. Hi Carol, I see some folks showing up. All right. So, as I mentioned, we're going to discuss wonky blocks. I keep saying that. Wonky blocks and how to create them even if you don't have a pattern. So I know for some of you this is sort of creating outside your comfort zone, but I find personally that sometimes when I'm sewing and I'm sort of just creating as I go, that's sometimes the most rewarding for me personally. It's just kind of fun to not know entirely how your project's going to look when it's completed, to just sort of create and be a free spirit about it. And that was the case with my Jungle Buddies quilt. I wasn't entirely certain how that was going to turn out or how it was going to look. I had a general idea that I wanted things to be, you know, kind of wonky, but beyond that I wasn't really certain how I was going to see how the project would look like when I was done. So that was a little bit intimidating at first, but then I just went in it, and sometimes you just have to work past those fears and just go for it, which is what I did. Let me get this chair out of the way. I'm kind of backing into it. Okay, I see some more folks are coming in. Karen and Shirley, good to see you. I wanted to get the commercial out of the way. I hope that you will sign up for our newsletter. You can do that over at www.soinspiredbybonnie.com, and that's SEW. And the newsletter gives you sale information, new product announcements, and our Tuesday tip announcements. So I hope you'll join us and sign up over there. If you miss the Tuesday's tip, we do post it on YouTube as well as Pinterest, and it's also available on the Facebook page. And we do add captions to the Facebook page, but those are added later. They're not done as we are live. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Now this project, I used my Jungle Buddies designs, and really the tools that you will need for this aren't anything terribly special. You'll need a square ruler that you want to be the same size as the cut size of your block, or a little bit bigger, and that's about it. You know, a rotary cutter, and that should just about do it. However, I do like to have, I think it's easier, I'm going to backstep a little bit. I think it's easier if you have a ruler the size you want to cut your finished block. I didn't. So, and a lot of us don't have every size in the book. We'd probably go broke if we did. But anyway, so I'm going to show you how to improvise and make it work. You're going to want to have some painter's tape or frog tape, which is what this is. A little backstory on this. I went down to my husband's garage to get some painter's tape, and we're in the process of remodeling a rental home in Colorado, so we're going back and forth between Texas and Colorado, and I went down to the garage and all his painting supplies are down in Colorado. So I had a little bit of a panic because I thought, oh my goodness, I need some kind of tape, and he's got a really well-stocked garage, and I found some frog tape, so that works perfectly fine. And then everybody knows by now that I really like this small 6 by 1 inch ruler. I use it a lot, and a Sharpie pen. I know that we don't ordinarily use a Sharpie pen in the sewing room, but for this project it comes in pretty handy. Now something else that I have in my stash of rulers that I just wanted to show you, but it's not necessary, it's not a requirement for doing these, I just think it's kind of a cool square ruler, is this June Taylor square ruler that has the center cut out. There's nothing in the center. It's I hope you can see that. I'll get that a little closer. It's by June Taylor, and this one happens to be an 8-inch square. That's what it's going to finish, is an 8-inch square, which would be fine. I happened to cut these 8 inches so that they became like 7.5-inch squares, but this would have worked perfectly fine had I pulled it out of my stash that particular night when I was creating. What I like about this ruler, if you haven't seen one before, and again, it's not absolutely necessary, I think it's just kind of a cool ruler to have, is the fact that since it has an open window, let me show you here, it makes it very easy to see the center of your design. Now I do have this Lazy Susan cutting circular cutting mat, but that's not necessary either. It's just something I have that's kind of convenient to use. But back to the ruler, as you can see, it's real easy since there's nothing in the way of lines and grid getting in the way, where you can kind of see that center of your design. And I like that because it just makes it easy, especially if you have something like this monkey, again from the Jungle Buddies, where his tail goes way out, and on some rulers you might center him where not the weight of the center of the design is, but rather perfectly centered like a computer will do. Sometimes if you've seen a computer generated center of a design, it's measuring from one end to the farthest ends of the design, no matter where they are. And sometimes that's not balanced to what our eyes see. And this particular ruler really makes it evident when you're looking at it that you really kind of want to focus on this little monkey's face, not the tail. And that might happen if you did perfectly center it like a computer would perfectly center the design. So I like this because it really it just makes it easy. So I thought I would share that with you. Again, it's not absolutely necessary. It's just a ruler that I think is pretty handy to have with embroidery designs. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Oh, another tip I wanted to share with you. I saw somewhere, I can't remember, I think it might have been on Pinterest, where a lady had taken an inexpensive Lazy Susan, had put a cutting mat on top. I think she glued it somehow with a nice smooth glue, nothing like hot glue, which would make it bubbly. But she glued her mat on there, but she had cut the mat down to size around to fit her Lazy Susan, and it made an inexpensive rotating cutting mat, which I thought was really clever. Wish I'd have known that before I bought a more expensive one. But yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes, right? You find out about some trick after the fact. All right, on this one, this was my boo-boo block, because let me tell you what I did wrong. I did not cut my sashing large enough. This, let me double check. This finished size is 7.5 inches, but I cut it 8 inches to allow for the seam allowance. You always add a 1/2 inch to your finished measurement when you're doing a quilt, 1/4 inch seam on either side. So this one I cut at 8 inches. Well, to get it wonky, you need enough wiggle room on your sashing that you're not going off with your ruler off of the sashing and cutting off. And this one was just a tad too short. So I recommend with an 8-inch square, that's the cut square, that you use a 3-inch wide sashing. Now, if you go down an inch, say you have a 7-inch cut square, you could use a 2.5-inch sashing. If you go up an inch, a 9-inch square that finishes at 8.5, and you cut it at 9 inches, make your sashing 3.5 inches. So for every inch you go up in this inner circle square, I said inner circle, didn't I? Inner square of your block, you want to go up a 1/2 inch on your sashing. To repeat that, for every inch that you go up, 8 inches, cut size, use a 3-inch sashing. If you go up to 9-inch cut size on the inner square, use a 3.5-inch sashing. And that way you'll have enough wiggle room when you cut this thing kind of wonky. All right, I wanted to have a finished 10-inch square. So what I did, I pulled out a ruler. I didn't have a 10.5-inch square ruler, which would allow for the seam allowance on a finished 10-inch square. So what I did was I took the the frog tape, and I marked off 10.5 inches on my ruler so that I had a clear visual, because I like to have a clear visual when I'm doing things. I don't like to have to try to figure it out each and every time I'm placing my ruler down. So I got my ruler marked. Then what I went in and did is I turned the ruler at an angle, and what I figured is from each, you've got 4 corners here, and I wanted the smallest corner, which would be, like, say on this pink, this is the smallest edge, that's the biggest edge. I wanted these smallest edges to be right around 1 inch. So I took my ruler, and I'll pull this up a little bit, and I tilted my ruler so that I'm going to use the opposing corners here. This is about, that's a 1/2 inch, so I want about 1 inch over there, and I want about 1 inch over here. Okay, so I've got these about right. Then I want these 2 opposing corners to be the same distance as well, and everything's a square, so it turns out that it would be about 1 inch as well on my smallest size on these 2 opposing corners. And I've got 1 inch there and 1 inch there, and once I have that, and don't move it, I can take my Sharpie. Now you could use the frog tape on here too, but I wanted another mark that showed up that wasn't as fat. So I used my Sharpie, and I'm going to come in here, sorry for just showing you the top of my head. I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to mark right on my ruler. I know that might scare some of you, but it's going to be okay. As long as you're marking the top side of your ruler and not the back side where all the marks are. You want to make sure you're on the smooth side where the top side of your ruler. You can take rubbing alcohol and remove these marks. They come off real easy. So I just did 2 corners, 2 opposing corners. And again, I just drew a little line on here. And now you can see I've marked up my ruler. I hope you can see I have a black marker line here and a black marker line there. And then all I have to do is line up those black marker lines. And as you can see, again, my sashing's a little bit too short on this, but yours won't be, because you'll cut yours 3 inches or wider than I did on my boo-boo sample, which I'll probably make into a pillow or something else. It's not, a lost project or ruined. Then you're going to take it and you're going to cut wonky this way, and since the ruler is too big, you're going to turn it around to do the other side. Excuse me. Because my ruler's too big, so you just turn it all the way around to do the other side. And then you cut these edges. Okay, does that make sense? You're going to cut first. I'm just kind of repeating myself here. You're going to cut these two edges first. Then you're going to just turn it around until you have the other two edges to cut. Line up your Sharpie marks and cut the other two edges. Okay? Now, as you can see, I did one angle and one tilted the other way. And that's really easy to do. All you have to do to get the opposite angle or the opposite direction of your block to turn is to flip the ruler upside down. And then again, line up your Sharpie marks and cut 1/2, turn it, and cut the other half. So that's really easy. And then I wanted to show you how easy it is to remove those marks. I'm just going to take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a cotton ball. And I'll just come in here, and again, you want the Sharpie marks to be on the top side of your ruler, and you can just wipe them right off. Very easy. So even if you made a boo-boo, maybe you didn't have your markings quite right, you can just easily wipe it right off. And I got a little bit of Sharpie marks on the edge of my ruler. I can just go in there and clean it up. It's that easy. Not an issue. But basically, I know a lot of you had asked how I did the Jungle Buddies quilt. That's what I did. I just sort of made it up as I went along. I had a blast doing it because there were no rules. I could just, and that's the nice thing about kind of going outside your comfort zone. There's no rules. You can just do whatever you want. You're not having to follow a pattern. Probably a lot of you know some people that you grew up with that didn't ever use patterns. They just started creating. And I think sometimes we all need to do that. It's just very freeing to just go in there and not really know what you're going to wind up until it's done and just start creating. It's so much fun, and I hope you'll give it a try. Okay, so let's go over and see if we have some questions. Try to get my computer over here a little bit closer so I can see, and you can still see me. Yvonne said, thank you so much. She's been waiting to do this quilt. Well, I hope this helps you. And again, if you have any questions, please just write them in the comments and I'll get back with you and we can answer them. Or if you have some questions right now, we can answer them. Tina says she loves it. Thank you, Tina. I can't tell you how much fun I had. I did forget to mention too that on the sashing, as you can kind of see, I did where I did matching colors on 1/2 of the block and matching sashing on the other half of the block. But you don't have to do that. You could do it all matching. You could do every single corner, or excuse me, every single side a different color. You know, the sky's the limit. What I did was I already had these test sews stitched out. I went to my quilt store and I picked out some wild fabrics that coordinated with my stitch outs. Ordinarily, I would, you know, kind of change up some colors based on the fabrics I like. But in this instance, since I already had the stitch outs done and they're a little bit more specific color shading since they're, you know, animals, although I say that and I have a pink snake here. Whoever has a pink snake. But you know, so they were kind of specific colors, but I just had a blast picking out fabrics. Don't we all? I think that I don't see any questions, so maybe I got everything answered. Wonky blocks are very forgiving. You can do a little bit different angle. I just chose to have about 1 inch at the smallest point so that when it was sewed, I wound up with about 3/4 of an inch on the sashing, because the other side of the sashing was obviously already sewn in there, so I was only losing a true 1/4 inch based on leaving about an inch there. But you could, you know, change that angle up a little bit. You don't have to do it at exactly an inch or two. You know, it's like I said, it's very forgiving. And when I was done, obviously I just added some sashing and some little tiny square blocks there. That was it. It was very, very easy. So I don't see any questions. I think we will call it a day. And I hope you have a lot of fun trying some new things and kind of stitching outside your comfort zone. That's the only way we grow, is to try something new and different. I had a little boo-boo with this one. No big deal. It's just one little square. I can make it into a pillowcase. I mean, not a pillowcase, a pillow. But I can figure out something to do with it. I'm not big on unsewing things, so I'll figure out something to make with this one. But I hope to see you next Tuesday with another Tuesday's tip. Until then, bye-bye for now.